Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're tackling one of the greatest sources of modern anxiety. It's that tension, between how hard we work and whether that effort actually, whether it creates something meaningful and lasting.
Right. It's a huge question. We're going to be diving into some foundational truths about labor, productivity, security,
Mm.
even legacy.
And we're distilling all of it from a single, very compact, but just tremendously powerful ancient text.
Our source material for this is Psalm 127. And what's crucial right out of the gate is its title. It says, A Song of Degrees for Solomon.
And that title alone it sets the stage, doesn't it?
It completely reframes the discussion. We're immediately looking at this through the eyes of the man who, arguably understood the physical demands of massive, enduring construction better than anyone else in ancient history.
Absolutely. And that's really our mission today. It's tailored specifically for you, the listener. We're going to explore this psalm verse by verse. We're really going to try and dissect the vital insights that the You Need Faith in Jesus team has drawn from this scripture.
And move it beyond just simple theology.
Yes. The goal is to derive wisdom that applies directly to your challenges, whether you're facing corporate burnout, strategizing your family's security, or, thinking about a multi-generational legacy. We want to synthesize these ideas into applicable knowledge.
And that authorship, as you said, is just foundational here. Solomon wasn't just a king. He was the ultimate project manager.
The great builder.
Exactly. He oversaw the construction of his own palace complex, which was immense, significant fortifications all over the kingdom, and of course, most famously, the first temple in Jerusalem. So when he speaks about building or security or dynastic success, he's speaking from a place of just unrivaled practical experience and vast resources.
That context is so vital because if anyone had the human resources, the skill, the capital, the sheer will to construct something that would last forever purely through human effort.
It was Solomon.
It was him. And yet, here is the central revelation. And this is drawn out so clearly in the source material from the You Need Faith in Jesus team. True, lasting success in any arena of life, a business, a family, a spiritual foundation, is entirely contingent upon God's direct involvement and empowerment.
It's not just about the sweat equity.
Not at all. It's about the divine foundation.
And that profound statement that our reliance has to come before our action is precisely where the psalm begins. It's a powerful, unmistakable principle laid out in verse 1 that just challenges the core assumption of human autonomy.
Let's get into it.
Okay, let's start by quoting the full scripture reference and verse. This really establishes the core argument of the entire text. This is Psalm 127, verse 1 from the King James Version. Except the Lord build the house, they labor in vain that build it. Except the Lord keep the city, the watchman waketh but in vain.
That opening line it's devastatingly direct, isn't it?
It is.
It hits hard because it directly challenges that modern gospel of the self-made person. We're told constantly that we are the masters of our destiny, that grit and hustle are the only real ingredients for success. But Solomon, the most successful builder of his time, tells us fundamentally, if God is not the architect, the labor is wasted.
What's so fascinating in the analysis of that word house is its inherent duality.
Right. It's not just a building.
Not at all. Solomon certainly understood the literal building. The temple was the ultimate example of a massive, costly structure. But in ancient Hebrew culture, house commonly refers to so much more.
Like what?
Well, a family line, a dynasty, a household, which was an economic unit. It could be a career, a church, really any long-term enterprise you could undertake.
So if we look at this through a modern lens, the house is really a metaphor for human enterprise itself.
Exactly.
So if you're building a startup and you're projecting an exit strategy 10 years from now, or you're building a community organization designed to last for a century.
Or just building a family legacy based on specific values.
Right, or even just trying to establish a reputation of integrity in your field. This principle applies across the board. The expert analysis in our source material from the You Need Faith in Jesus team is clear. Any project, whether it's corporate, personal, or relational, it requires divine direction.
And the absolute crux of the verse lies in that word, vain. The futility of it all. The text doesn't say that the labor won't produce a result.
No, it says the labor will be in vain.
It states plainly that human effort, our skill, our complex planning, huge financial investments, alone, they are ultimately futile if they lack that divine direction and presence.
I think we need to really define labor in vain because a lot of people, they look around and they see houses built without God and they seem to be standing, sometimes quite successfully. How does the text square that temporary success with vain labor?
That is a crucial point, and you're right. It doesn't mean you didn't work hard or even that you didn't finish the structure.
Hmm.
Vain, in this context, implies that the end result is either empty, it's fleeting, or it lacks any real spiritual fulfillment and enduring consequence.
So you might hit the goal.
You might. You might get the IPO, the promotion, the big house, but the success feels hollow
Hmm.
or maybe fragile because the foundation of the work, the very core of it, was disconnected from God's intended will and blessing.
So a vain structure might stand for a generation.
But it won't fulfill its ultimate purpose or provide ultimate satisfaction. It's built on sand, so to speak.
And to make this point really profound, we have to go back to Solomon himself. I mean, think about the temple.
Right.
It's estimated to have taken 7 years, tens of thousands of skilled workers. The material costs were just astronomical: gold, silver, cedar. You couldn't even quantify it. Solomon poured the kingdom's entire treasury and all its expertise into this one building.
And yet, even with that unrivaled skill and scale, the illustrative example from the context of the author is his own realization that the temple, the physical building, was worthless without God's active residing presence.
So the most magnificent structure ever built for worship
Was functionally useless if the Lord hadn't directed and empowered the construction, and especially if he chose to withdraw his presence from it. Solomon realized his massive human effort was necessary, yes, but fundamentally insufficient.
That realization is just such a powerful challenge to our default reliance on our own, impressive strategy documents and our detailed budgets. If the temple required a divine foundation, what does that say about my Monday morning sales meeting?
Exactly.
The source material from the You Need Faith in Jesus team forces us to ask, is my current project built on my ambition or is it built on God's direction?
And to make this principle even stronger, we have to recognize this isn't just some ancient, isolated Old Testament idea. This theme of dependence, it runs right through the entire Bible, and it culminates in a really clear, definitive statement in the New Testament.
Okay, let's introduce that parallel because it speaks directly to this mechanism of fruitfulness and production.
It really does. It raises that important question. What is the true nature of productivity and spiritual viability?
Yeah.
The full quote and reference is from John chapter 15, verse 5, King James Version. I am the vine, ye are the branches. He that abideth in me, and I in him, the same bringeth forth much fruit. For without me, ye can do nothing.
Without me, ye can do nothing. I mean, that's definitive. It's not conditional.
Not at all.
The analogy of the branch severed from the vine is it's chilling. Because it doesn't just mean you can't do things easily. It means complete emptiness, an inability to produce true, lasting, living fruit.
It perfectly reinforces the message of Psalm 127, verse 1.
Our labor, no matter how energetic or detailed or well-funded, it becomes fruitless. It becomes vain if we're not abiding in the vine.
And the output might look plentiful, in quantity, but if it lacks that life-giving connection to the vine, it's spiritually nullified. The work may look impressive from the outside for a season. A dead branch might still have some green leaves for a little while.
Right, for a time.
But the capacity for true, abundant, living fruit that endures is zero. The analysis from the You Need Faith in Jesus team really emphasizes that our reliance has to shift completely, away from the quality of our expertise or the cleverness of our strategies.
To the continuous foundational flow of divine power.
Precisely.
Okay, so moving beyond the house, that active project or enterprise, Solomon immediately pivots to security. He talks about how we protect what we've built. And this is just as relevant today as it was when cities relied on stone walls.
It really is.
And so now we switch gears from construction to defense, preservation. The security aspect addresses how we maintain and protect the things we've invested in. The city represents our stability, our boundaries, our collective well-being.
And today, you could say it stands for everything we meticulously try to defend.
And the focal point of that defense is the watchman.
The watchman is the embodiment of human diligence. He undertakes this necessary, disciplined human effort, staying awake all night, scanning the horizon, enduring the cold and the long hours. But the text warns that this intense labor of alertness is vain if God does not provide divine protection.
I think we sometimes forget the sheer diligence of an ancient watchman. In a world without radar or infrared, he was literally the last line of defense against a surprise attack.
He couldn't afford to be sleepy.
Not for a second, he was the most vigilant person in the entire city. And yet, the text says even that maximum human effort is insufficient if God has not chosen to keep the city.
And it's not that diligence is unnecessary. The psalm isn't promoting laziness.
No.
It's saying diligence is insufficient. Security does not rest on preparation or alertness alone. If a city is besieged, the best walls and the most awake guards, they can't stop an enemy if God has a different plan. We see examples throughout history where the most fortified positions fail because of circumstances totally outside of human control.
This raises such an essential question for our modern lives. And the source material, as highlighted by the You Need Faith in Jesus team, it encourages us to apply this directly to our current cities and our watchmen.
Right. What is your city today? For you listening, maybe your city is your financial security, which you monitor meticulously through, complex portfolio management and risk mitigation strategy.
Or maybe it's your children's safety, which requires constant vigilance, school monitoring, digital safety controls.
It could even be a national system you rely on for political or civil stability.
And who is the watchman? It's often us. We are the perpetual watchman. We spend so much energy being our own defense system, don't we? Alertness is high, monitoring is constant, and as a result, anxiety is rampant.
Because we think the outcome rests solely on our ability to stay awake, to find the bug in the code, or to spot the next market crash.
The psychological toll of that relentless vigilance is just immense.
And this leads us directly into the first practical application drawn from the source material. This has to be, as the analysts describe it, a vital check on our self-reliance. It forces us to identify where our true trust actually lies.
Okay, so what is that practical step for the listener who is currently operating on that kind of high alert vigilance? How do we functionally implement this truth of dependence?
So practical step one is all about the reordering of our approach. We have to begin every major endeavor, whether that's starting a new project, entering a difficult negotiation, even planning a vacation, not with strategy first, but with prayer, seeking God's will and acknowledging where the true power and protection lie.
That means reversing the typical process, which is a massive psychological shift.
It is.
Usually we dedicate, 95% of our time and mental energy to detailed strategy, risk assessment, contingency planning, and then maybe we tack on a brief prayer at the end, kind of hoping for a blessing on our already decided plan.
This text demands the opposite. It requires us to seek divine direction and presence first, making God the active director, not just the passive sponsor. If the Lord does not build, our labor is vain. If the Lord does not keep, our watching is futile.
The effort still needs to be made.
Of course, but the trust has to be relocated.
So the action step for you, the listener, is clear, and it requires a structural change in how you approach work and security. Acknowledge complete dependence on God for lasting success. If you are building the house, you start by asking the master builder for the blueprints. If you're guarding the city, you hand the keys over to the ultimate keeper.
It's a powerful invitation to humility.
It is. It's a radical reframing of productivity. It tells us your efforts are necessary and your skill is laudable, but without divine empowerment, you are just building on sand.
And the consequence of ignoring this principle sets up the next verse perfectly. The inevitable result of all that self-reliant labor is burnout and emotional fatigue.
Right. So moving to verse 2, Solomon describes the direct, painful consequences of ignoring the principle in verse 1. He describes that exhausting, soul-crushing life of anxious toil. Let's read the full scripture reference in verse. It's Psalm 127, verse 2 from the KJV.
It is vain for you to rise up early, to sit up late, to eat the bread of sorrows, for so he giveth his beloved sleep.
And here's where this ancient text becomes just immediately relevant to the 21st century mental health crisis.
Absolutely. Solomon is describing the perpetual grind that defines modern life, that frantic, worried striving that plagues almost every high achiever today.
We absolutely have to clarify that this verse is not an argument against diligence. It's not against hard work.
No, the biblical ethic strongly supports hard work, energy, and commitment.
This is a condemnation of frantic, worried striving, of living a life where the motivation for that relentless activity is based on anxiety, fear of failure, and the belief that success hinges entirely on our personal exhaustion.
The imagery he uses is so incredibly detailed. It paints this picture of someone who is perpetually pursued by their professional anxieties. If we deconstruct it, rise up early, to sit up late.
That's the classic romanticized description of hustle culture, isn't it? The entrepreneur who sacrifices everything, the 24/7 worker whose life is defined by their schedule, not their relationships.
I see that hustle culture celebrated everywhere. The idea that if you're not miserable, you're not working hard enough.
But the most profound, striking image in this verse for me is to eat the bread of sorrows. What does that truly imply?
The bread of sorrows symbolizes your meals, your necessary sustenance that are completely tainted by stress, by worry, by fear.
So this person isn't enjoying their food.
No, or their family, or any momentary rest, because they are mentally chained to the office, to the project, to the next deadline. Their fundamental necessities of life are interwoven with their fear and anxiety about the outcome. They eat stress for breakfast, worry for lunch, and fear for dinner.
The expert analysis from the You Need Faith in Jesus team confirms this interpretation. This desperate way of living results in a vain or empty existence that actively robs you of peace and joy.
Right. You might achieve great things, you might build the biggest house, but you never actually enjoy it because the anxiety is a constant shadow. This continuous worried striving is what God judges as vain or empty because it produces a result purchased at the expense of the soul.
It's a perfect psychological depiction of burnout. It's vain not because the work wasn't strenuous, but because the reliance and the expectation were misplaced.
And that leads to a life characterized by internal suffering, symbolized by that knitter bread. If you are striving constantly because you believe the city will fall, if you close your eyes for a moment, you are living in perpetual sorrow.
So if the listener is that watchman and they're constantly stressed about the city's safety, how do they break that cycle?
Well, against this backdrop of frantic, exhausted effort, the second half of the verse offers this profound contrast and promise. For so he giveth his beloved sleep.
And we immediately think of physical rest, which is certainly included. Rest is a necessity. But the source material synthesizes the meaning of sleep here as something much, much deeper.
Right. It represents a deep, soul-level peace that comes from the cessation of anxious striving. A peace that stems entirely from trusting in God's sovereign care.
It's the ability to truly stop worrying.
It is. It's the core trust factor at play.
Right.
The capacity to genuinely release the day's burdens and the next day's worries into God's capable hands. This person can sleep not because their work is finished, work is never finished, but because they genuinely believe He is in control. He is the active keeper, even while they are entirely defenseless in their rest.
So the anxiety of the self-reliant builder or watchman is replaced by the tranquility of the beloved child who knows their father is awake and watching over them.
It transforms the necessary hard work from a desperate struggle for self-preservation into a restful, non-anxious expression of faith.
And this profound connection between casting our burdens and receiving rest is immediately reinforced in the New Testament. It shows the consistency of this divine principle throughout all of Scripture.
Let's introduce that parallel scripture that focuses on releasing those specific burdens, the care that plagues the soul and causes us to rise early and sit up late.
Okay.
The full quote and reference is found in 1 Peter chapter 5, verse 7 from the King James Version. Casting all your care upon him, for he careth for you.
The connection is so explicit and beautiful. We can cease the anxious labor and lay down the bread of sorrows because the foundation for that rest is God's genuine, personal, and active care for us. When we cast our cares, we're essentially saying, I recognize that you are the true builder and the true watchman, so I don't have to stay up all night trying to do your job, nor do I have to eat stress-tainted meals.
And that recognition, that confidence in divine care, is the engine that allows us to break the cycle of anxious labor and receive the spiritual rest he offers. We are his beloved, and he takes responsibility for our well-being and the success of our God-directed work. The reward for faith is peace, symbolized by sleep.
We have to address the listener directly here because the modern world operates entirely on that rise up early, sit up late philosophy.
It does.
Society promotes a culture of perpetual burnout. It measures success by hours worked, stress endured, and lack of sleep. It tells us rest is for the weak.
And the source material provides the divine antidote to this toxic worldview. So practical step 2 is a conscious, active rejection of this worldview. The analysis notes that we are required to work hard. Diligence is key to good stewardship, but the subsequent piece comes from learning to trust God with the results, knowing that his work continues even while we rest.
The You Need Faith in Jesus team perspective is so clear here. Peace should be found first and foremost in our relationship with God, our loving Father who provides for his children even when they are asleep, not in the perfection of our accomplishments or the length of our working hours.
Trust is the lubricant that removes the friction from our labor.
So the action step for you, the listener, it requires deliberate planning and spiritual discipline. You have to establish firm boundaries between work and rest.
And dedicate a specific time each day, the end of the workday, the beginning of the Sabbath perhaps, to consciously and deliberately release control and anxiety to God. This is an intentional act of faith, replacing the consumption of the bread of sorrows with the acceptance of his provided rest.
This gives us a beautiful balance for the work week. Verse 1 tells us what to do before we start seek God's foundation.
And verse 2 tells us what to do when we finish. Trust God with the results.
It completely reframes work from a desperate struggle to an act of worship and stewardship.
And having established the role of God in our labor and our security, the psalm now makes this pivotal transition. It moves to the concept of lasting legacy, shifting the focus from the house built by hand to the house built by heart, the dynasty.
Let's get into that.
The psalm naturally transitions to the concept of a dynasty or a family line, confirming that a godly legacy, just like a successful enterprise or a secured city, is fundamentally a gift from God, not purely a human achievement. Let's look at verse 3 of Psalm 127 from the KJV. Lo, children are a heritage of the Lord, and the fruit of the womb is his reward.
This transition is so important because it forces us to recognize where our most enduring legacy truly lies. I mean, it's rarely the building we erect or the money we make. That stuff inevitably fades.
Right.
Our most lasting impact is the people we raise and influence.
The continuous theme holds true here. The things we value most, the house, the city, the family, they only flourish under divine blessing. The psalm brings this idea of building a house full circle, revealing that the ultimate house is the family line itself.
And the terminology used here is so precise and elevating. Children are not just part of life. They are explicitly called an heritage and a reward. We really need to unpack the weight of those terms in their ancient context.
Okay, so an heritage, or an inheritance in ancient Israel, was an incredibly valuable permanent property. It was the land, the covenant promises. It was the defining physical and relational asset passed down through generations.
So to call children an heritage of the Lord.
It means they carry the weight and value of a future dynasty. They are an asset entrusted to the parents to manage on God's behalf.
And reward further clarifies this. A reward is a gracious gift you receive, not something you earn through simple merit. You work hard to build a house, but you receive children as a favor.
And this stands in such sharp contrast to a prevalent modern worldview that often sees children as, well, primarily a financial or personal inconvenience, a roadblock to career progression, or a drain on limited resources.
This psalm calls us back to a biblical mindset, defining them as treasures, as a reward given directly from the Lord.
By shifting the perspective from children as a burden or a cost to children, as an inheritance and a reward, the entire enterprise of parenting is elevated to one of divine stewardship.
And this concept isn't just Solomonic wisdom, it's foundational to the entire arc of Scripture.
Absolutely. This profound truth about legacy and family structure is woven into God's design for humanity from the very, very beginning. It's not an isolated thought from the King of Israel.
No, the analysis from the You Need Faith in Jesus team naturally draws us back to God's very first blessing and command to mankind after creation.
The full quote and reference is Genesis chapter 1, verse 28, King James Version. And God blessed them, and God said unto them, Be fruitful and multiply.
The command to be fruitful and multiply was God's initial plan for expanding his presence and influence on earth. It was the first act of blessing, the first step in establishing his kingdom influence across the planet.
Which means raising children is inherently kingdom work. It's not just personal housekeeping. It is participating in a divine mandate to steward the human race and expand the witness of God's character through a godly lineage. The material from the You Need Faith in Jesus team highlights the critical importance of recovering this perspective, especially in a culture that often tries to diminish the profound spiritual value and weight of the family structure.
So if children are defined as a gift, then the active role parents must take is in the reception and the stewardship of that gift.
Exactly. It's not enough to simply have children. We must actively receive them as the reward they are meant to be.
So practical step 3 is about commitment, intentionality, and vision. We have to receive children as a precious gift from God and commit to raising them with purpose. seeing the family unit not just as a private group, but as a powerful public spiritual testimony to the world.
That distinction between receiving a reward and merely tolerating a responsibility is everything. The You Need Faith in Jesus team perspective is clear. We must view this role as a stewardship of a divine reward.
And stewardship implies responsibility, accountability, investment.
It does. We are caring for something highly valuable that ultimately belongs to God, and we are accountable for how we shape it.
So the action step here is to consciously shift the family mindset. Instead of viewing the effort of raising children as just maintenance, keeping them fed and safe, view it as purposeful spiritual investment.
And that requires an intentionality that moves beyond simple provision and focuses squarely on character development, faith transmission, and spiritual heritage.
And once we establish that family is a reward, the psalm moves immediately into what that reward is for. What's the purpose of this heritage? And the answer is for influence and defense, using this brilliant imagery of the arrow.
A metaphor that brings us right back to the vigilance and defense we talked about in verse 1. This final section shifts the focus from the nature of the gift to its practical utility and profound purpose. Let's read the final verses of the psalm, Psalm 127, verses 4 and 5 from the KJV. As arrows are in the hand of a mighty man, so are children of the youth. Happy is the man that hath his quiver full of them. They shall not be ashamed, but they shall speak with the enemies in the gate.
Wow, what a powerful, militaristic, and purposeful image for family life. This is where the wisdom of Solomon the king, the military and political leader, truly crystallizes the ultimate purpose of legacy.
Let's start with that phrase, children of the youth. The source explains this refers to children born when the father is in his strength and vigor.
Meaning he's best positioned physically and mentally to train them, guide them, and actively utilize them in his mission.
Right. It's about maximizing the opportunity for intentional training.
So it's not really about age demographics, but about preparedness and intentionality from the parent. The father is in his prime to shape the future generation.
And then we get to that central, profound metaphor, the arrow.
Which is so rich, it requires deep unpacking.
An arrow is fundamentally a precision instrument. It's a long-range weapon designed for defense and for extending a warrior's influence well beyond his physical reach. And that utility requires intense, meticulous preparation and careful handling from the mighty man, the parent.
Okay, let's break down the 3 essential processes you need to create a useful, impactful arrow, as highlighted in the commentary from the You Need Faith in Jesus team.
Okay, first, the arrow must be carefully shaped. This speaks directly to the process of discipleship and character training. The shaft has to be straightened and balanced.
That intentional, sometimes difficult work of sanding down the rough edges of character, teaching discipline, instilling virtue, it's non-negotiable.
It has to be. A bent or unbalanced arrow will never fly true, no matter how strong the bow is.
Second, it must be aimed.
Right. This means providing direction, vision, and a moral compass centered on God's purpose. A powerful, straight arrow that's just shot randomly is a wasted effort. It might even hit unintended, dangerous targets. We have to teach our children what to aim at, giving them a God-centered worldview and an understanding of their unique spiritual mission.
And third, it must be released.
This is the ultimate act of faith and preparedness, sending them out into the world for God's kingdom. We prepare them not to stay safely tucked away at home, sheltered from every danger, but to penetrate the public sphere with their influence. The source material tells us this preparation has to focus on equipping them for engagement.
So the overall purpose is crystal clear. Raising children means preparing them to be long-range instruments of influence for God. They're not just mini versions of us.
No, there are long-range weapons of spiritual impact designed to outlast our own efforts.
Think of the satisfaction of that mighty man who has invested years into crafting the perfect quiver of arrows. They're sharp, balanced, ready for deployment. That's the happiness of the father mentioned in the verse.
It's confidence. Confidence in the quality and readiness of his legacy to defend his honor and carry his values forward.
And the ultimate payoff of this purposeful parenting is captured in that final phrase. They shall not be ashamed, but they shall speak with the enemies in the gate.
We really need a deep understanding of the significance of the gate in ancient society to grasp the full weight of this blessing.
Okay, explain that.
The city gate wasn't just an entrance and exit point. It was the definitive center of community, commerce, and political life. It was where major business transactions happened, where contracts were signed, it was where law courts were held, and where public debate occurred.
So it's the place of power, social standing, and accountability.
Absolutely. If you went to the gate, you were engaging in public life, you were seeking justice, or you were defending your reputation. To appear there alone was a position of extreme vulnerability.
If you were falsely accused or threatened with injustice, your solitary position made you easily dismissed.
But the final blessing here states that a man who appeared at the gate with many godly, well-trained sons standing beside him had undeniable honor and strength. He could not be easily intimidated or silenced or treated unjustly by his enemies, his opponents, in public life. In this context, that often means legal or political adversaries.
So this is the practical defense offered by a godly legacy. It's not necessarily about physical confrontation.
No, not at all. It's about moral weight, social influence, and communal witness. A strong, unified, godly family unit acts as a source of strength and testimony in what can be a hostile world. It speaks volumes without even uttering a word, just through their presence and character.
So if the father's life or character was called into question at the gate,
The presence of sons, who were known for their righteousness, their competence, their moral backbone, that acted as a moral bulwark. It ensured justice and respect for the father. Their successful character was the father's ultimate defense.
this dramatically elevates parenting from just a private domestic concern to a public political testimony. The way we raise our children directly influences the amount of respect and strength we command in the wider society. It's the highest form of successful city keeping.
It is.
So let's synthesize this final application. We've established that relying solely on yourself and your work is vain labor. We've seen that true rest comes from trusting God with the results. And now, the ultimate successful labor is the intentional shaping of legacy.
So practical step 4 requires a commitment to the purposeful long-term shaping of children's character, understanding that their future impact is the family's ultimate defense and honor. And this demands sacrificing immediate personal satisfaction for long-term faithfulness and preparation.
The principles shared by the You Need Faith in Jesus team really push us toward radical intentionality. If we fail to shape the arrow, it will fly crooked if it flies at all. If we don't aim it at a righteous target, it serves no godly purpose. It's a call to active discipleship, not passive exposure.
And the action step derived from this is to identify and invest in the specific ways you, the listener, can aim your children, or those you influence, towards righteous public impact and kingdom work. This means actively preparing them to engage ethically, competently, and confidently in the world.
To speak with the enemies in the gate, using the principles found in the source material.
Exactly.
That means teaching them critical thinking, spiritual discernment, biblical principles for business, and moral courage. So when they step into the gate, whether that's a university seminar, a corporate negotiation, a courtroom, or a political debate, they carry the undeniable strength and integrity derived from their righteous training.
It ensures that the legacy we leave is not just a building that stands for a few years, but a dynamic, influential spiritual force that continues to extend God's influence long after our personal labor is done. This is the ultimate difference between fleeting success and enduring heritage.
Achieved only when God is acknowledged as the builder, the keeper, and the giver of the reward.
That's the whole picture.
This deep dive into Psalm 127 has been incredibly detailed. It's provided a comprehensive framework for all of life's major endeavors. The message is just remarkably cohesive, tying personal effort directly to divine blessing.
We really covered 3 distinct yet interconnected truths that defy human self-reliance. First, all work and enterprise are vain without God's foundation, both in the building of the house and the keeping of the city. That was verse 1.
Right.
Second, peace, symbolized by that soul-level sleep, is God's gracious gift only to the heart that trusts and ceases anxious toil. That was verse 2.
And finally, family, our legacy, is defined as a powerful divine reward, to be shaped as arrows and aim for positive influence and effective defense in the public square. Verses 3 through 5.
The analysis synthesized by the You Need Faith in Jesus team material just makes that connection undeniable.
The ultimate listener takeaway, then, is a profound call to relinquish the illusion of absolute control.
It is. We have to trust God in every sphere, to acknowledge Him as the sole architect of the house, the true keeper of the city, and the gracious giver and shaper of the ultimate reward, a godly, enduring legacy. Our success is not measured by the length of our working day.
But by the depth of our dependence.
Exactly.
We started this deep dive acknowledging that tension between human effort and divine blessing. We end it with the solution. The effort remains, but the reliance shifts entirely. And this gives us the peace that guards the heart, allowing us to build without vanity and rest without anxiety.
That holistic approach is truly the enduring wisdom of Solomon.
It really is. To leave you with a final provocative thought, building on that powerful arrow imagery. If the individuals you mentor and influence are like arrows, what is the specific rightest target God has given you to aim them at? Are you training them primarily for personal comfort, safety, and financial security in some secluded valley? Or are you preparing them for battle and influence in the visible, sometimes hostile gate of the public square?
The answers to those questions really define the nature and the enduring quality of your legacy.
Excellent point. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive.